Hello, today we're here with Michelle Dotter of Dzanc Books, and welcome, Michelle.
Hey, glad to be here.
Michelle's the publisher. So, first of all, tell me about Dzanc and your mission and what kind of press you are.
Absolutely. So Dzanc is an independent nonprofit press. The independent obviously means that we're not a subsidiary of any of the big five. But one of the amazing things about being a nonprofit is that it gives us the ability to do books because they're beautiful and they deserve to be in the world and not just based on commercial merit. We do primarily literary fiction and some nonfiction. All of our books are very, I think of them as books that don't want to be movies. Language is very important. It's a central part of what's being communicated, not just a medium through which the story is told. Because we're a nonprofit, we've also worked on a number of outreach programs. So we run the Disquiet Literary Festival, which is held in Lisbon, Portugal every summer. It's a chance to work with and learn from Portuguese writers and with other international writers. We're working on starting up a residency in Amherst, Massachusetts. And we also run a Writers in the School program in Michigan that puts a professional poet into or I'm sorry, not environmental, into elementary and middle school classrooms to teach writing to kids, kind of fill in some of that hole that is left in public education sometimes by funding cuts. So we have our fingers in a lot of pies, obviously. But for me, the central core of it, what Dzanc was founded for, is to publish these writers who maybe are going to be overlooked by agents, by editors at the big houses because they don't fit the mold. They're not writing exactly the same thing that sat on the top of the New York Times bestseller list for 20 weeks. And that inventiveness, that ability to reimagine what a story is, what a narrative can be, that's what keeps it exciting, and that's what we're in it for.
That sounds great. I love that books that don't want to be movies. I think that's a
Yeah.
great line. How would a book, Michelle, get noticed by Dzanc? I mean, tell me a little bit about your process of acquisition.
Yeah, we actually have a pretty wide range of ways for folks to end up with us. We do open submissions periodically, and we also run both a novel prize and a short story collection prize every year. Some years we get to add a third one. It all just comes down to budgeting. Next year, I think we might have a poetry prize too, so that could be very fun. We take both agented and unagented submissions, and that's very important to me because I think ultimately, if you think about it from a literary agency's perspective, right, they have to be very selective with their clients and they have to take the kinds of clients who might sell big to one of the big houses. And that's not necessarily who we're looking for. So having that open door that we get to look at such a wide array of work is, I think, is where some of the best books come from. I love reading for the contests every year. There's always something in there that I never saw coming, a premise I never would have thought of, and a narrative approach that just knocks me out. We've just finished reading for those for this year, and yeah, it's such a pleasure to get to dive into all that new work and get to know so many new writers.
Oh, that's great. I love the fact that there's just a variety of ways of getting involved, and
Yeah.
so many entry points all the way from elementary school to these very accomplished writers, and of which you've published so many. How many books a year do you publish?
Usually between about 10 and 13, which is a lot for a small staff. We're about a four-person staff if you're really generous and you count the publishers who are emeritus.
Right. And well, let me ask about that. In the nonprofit world, as you know, as I mentioned earlier, we teach a course in literary publishing, and but most people, I think, like you and I, kind of learned by doing. It's an apprenticeship more
Yeah.
than a course, and I think a lot of people, even writers, don't know how the books get made, and what happens.
Yeah,
There's
that's
usually
very true.
a lot of surprises. Um,
Mhm.
what have you found? What surprises you? What is your biggest challenge as a nonprofit literary publisher?
Um, Two things, I think. One thing is obviously funding. We're a little rare in that we're a nonprofit that's not affiliated with a university. It
Right.
gives us a lot of freedom in what we do, and the ability to just go where our passion is, and drive toward new initiatives. But yeah, it means that we are always trying to figure out, grants, donations, where we can kind of add to those revenue streams and support ourselves. We're lucky to have a longtime donor, Steve Gillis, who's one of the co-founders, who has absolutely made this press what it is and keeps it running. So it's great to know that somebody's got our backs. But that's definitely a big part of my job these days.
Right.
Um, and then I think the other one is discoverability of the books, right? I mean, publishing is in this phase, has been in this phase for about a decade, where imprints at the largest presses are being collapsed into each other. Um, certain titles are being massively prioritized over other titles on the list. You have the lead titles that are getting $500,000 marketing budgets, and everything else that's getting $10,000, right? And when you get that kind of dichotomy, what you see is that the opportunities to put books in front of people are, for the most part, very expensive. And as a small press, we're not going to be able to compete with that. So what we do instead is we focus on audience profiling for every book, thinking about, where is the audience for this? What communities, what regions of the world, what cultures, people of which backgrounds are going to really vibe with this book? And then how do we reach those people? It's a little more work intensive. A lot of times we ask the author to help out with thinking about where their ideal audience is, who they see their readers as, where they might find a book like this, right? But that push to get books in front of people, it's tough. It's definitely tough, but it's so satisfying. We have a book that came out in September, Peach Pit, which is an anthology. It's technically, the subtitle is 16 Stories of Unsavory Women, and it's just been such a hit. Can't even really keep it in print. So that is very satisfying.
That sounds great. What a wonderful subtitle.
Yeah.
16 to make a t-shirt from that, I
Yeah.
think.
Let's just make an unsavory women t-shirt.
Right, right. So as you know, we're looking to connect with Dzanc as part of our internship program at Wilkes and Etruscan Press. And tell me a little bit about how interns would fit into your community.
Yeah. So we do several different kinds of interns, and I'm thinking that the interns we're talking about here at Wilkes interns would probably be in the latter set. First one is that we actually run a pretty robust internship program. We run 3 12-week internship sessions a year. Usually there are between 15 and 20 students in each of those. And it's a dedicated 12-week program. Every week there's a lecture on some aspect of publishing, the fundamentals of developmental editing or copy editing, the production process, finding jobs in publishing contracts, all those tricky things the industry likes to be very opaque about. And alongside that, interns work on reading and analyzing submissions, um, looking at copy editing, doing promotional research, that kind of thing. So it's definitely an option. The other thing, though, is that we have some longer term interns, people who stay with us longer than 12 weeks, who are with us for an entire semester or 2 semesters. And what they tend to focus on is the deeper work. So things like developmental editing or copy editing, where you're actually interacting with the author, you're learning how to deliver changes in such a way that someone can hear them and accept them, which is almost as important as figuring out what to mark in the first place, right? That author relationship, that collaboration, it's really almost the biggest part of being an editor. We also have some longer term interns who focus on things like grant research, or publicity and marketing, who dig in and manage a campaign for one of our upcoming books. So all of those are opportunities available to folks from Wilkes if they're interested.
That's great. And these can be conducted virtually, Michelle. They don't
Yeah,
need to
it's
be. Yeah.
yeah, it's all done remotely. Otherwise, you'd all just be in my second bedroom, which is what this is.
Right, right. Well, thank you so much, Michelle. I'm so looking forward to you joining our community at
Yeah.
Wilkes and to getting to know Dzanc better, one of the most prestigious presses in the country. and
Thanks so much, Phil.
with a wonderful mission and a recent winner of the Small Press AWP award. Thank you, Michelle. Thanks for joining us, and we'll be in touch.
All right. Thanks so much, Phil.